Welcome back in. If you're just now joining us here on the 2020 Ballot Breakdown, we're going over everything you need to know about the Payne County ballot this year. So far, we've heard from the senator candidates and learned about the Supreme Court justices and state questions.
Now it's time to hear from the House of Representatives candidates, Democrat Trish Ranson and Republican Dr. Aaron Means. I sat down with both of them to talk about their plans for the elections. First up, we're going to hear from the incumbent, Trish Ranson.
Recent letter to the editor that you posted on your Facebook page, a gentleman using you to help with his unemployment benefits. How can, of course, students know that you go and vote on legislation? What can a student do more face-to-face, more tangibly, I guess would be the word, to use you as a representative?
Well, I think what's interesting is if you asked 10 different people what a state legislator does, you'd probably get 10 different answers. You know, the state legislator is our representative at the state legislature and creating legislation and voting on bills and so forth. They are the ally. So that is my role. I'm an ally for my constituency if there are bills that need to be addressed or voted on and so forth. Example of that was, you know, when we talked last about Allie Nuri and my constituent who is a traumatic brain injury survivor, and she saw that there was a need for traumatic brain injury survivors, and so she advocated with me and we put forward legislation. And that is still in the works. Hopefully this next session, it will pass the finish line and we will be able to get federal funding for treatment of traumatic brain injury. But it's also a way that, let's say that a constituent is having problems navigating anything. So let's, you know, John Cooper, he was having problems navigating the unemployment system. And that is a way that if you're having problems there, then calling me is a next step. Because oftentimes when I call somebody or if I reach out to somebody, they're going to answer the phone maybe a little bit more readily than they would for somebody whose name they don't know. And so then I can be that advocate. And so my office has worked on several unemployment claims that have reached multiple barriers during these last several months. And we've been able to find success for quite a few, others not so much. And so it's one of those things where I am at the ready of whatever the need may be.
Maybe there is some efforts out there in the legislature. Maybe there's not. If there is, what would you like to see to maybe lower the cost of college? Just make it a better experience for students, because Oklahoma education's been pretty muddied lately these last few years.
Yes, it has. You know, it's interesting. I think back to my college experience. I went into college. I will tell you, I graduated in 1988. So 88, 89 was my freshman year in college. And at that time, the state paid 80% of my costs, you know, for going to school. And I put up the other 20%. Now, let's say, you know, the year that my son was a freshman, I mean, he's a sophomore now, so he graduated in 2000. So 2000, 2001, the state paid 20%, and he is up for the other 80. So it's completely flipped just in my life with my experience and then my son's experience. The idea that we can cut corners in higher ed, that tuition can pay for things, is gotten to the point now where higher ed is almost out of reach for quite a few Oklahomans. And that is something that is short-sighted, because as we look down the line of jobs that are going to be necessary for our economy to boom, we need individuals with a higher ed degree. And it doesn't mean that that's all we need. We absolutely need trade as well. And career tech is underfunded. Our public schools are underfunded. And, you know, it's all down that pipeline. And we need to make sure that we are investing in every stage of education down the line, because we are going to need that for our future. And we can't lose sight of the long term.
I'm going to close with this. Of course, in your race, you don't have all the ads on television that we see. We have some mailers, but you do 1,000 of these kind of things. You're on the radio all the time. If someone goes to the polling place and one thing sticks in their mind to vote for you, what would that one thing be?
The one word that I use to describe myself is compassion. It's not just my way or the highway. It is, let's listen to everyone. Let's make sure that our decisions take everyone's opinion into account, and then makes the best decision for Stillwater and Oklahoma. And I believe that that is something that I do. I strive for that every day, always making sure that folks who reach out to me, I have an open heart and an open mind. And with dealing with folks across the aisle, that is very important, because if I just have a closed mind because of their party affiliation, nothing will get accomplished in our state. And that is the ultimate goal. We need a better Oklahoma.
Representative, thank you. Good luck on the last 8 days of the trail, and I'm sure we will speak sooner than later again.
Thank you, Brody. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course.
Is the incumbent candidate running for her second term.
Ranson is running against Republican candidate Dr. Aaron Means. Means is a veteran and served as Chief Dental Support Officer in the Air Force. He is running on a pro-business, pro-life, and pro-education platform. Let's see what he had to say about his campaign.
Policy-wise, not necessarily specific bills, because we don't know if those are going to be on the floor next session. If you are, what more generally would you do different than Representative Ransom?
Okay. Well, in general, what I want to be is a voice of peace and a voice of calm and unity. Promote the truth about all of us, which we all are just alike. I mean, we have superficial decorations of hair, skin, eye color, things such as that. I want to be proactive to speak outwardly that we're stronger together. We being more unified and talking through issues, which means I would be very comfortable bringing people together and really begin to talk through any issues that we may have in our own community, that we can be stronger, helping us to build community and keeping us from going the ways that other cities have gone in other states. Also, I will look towards trying to find a way to strengthen our education system.
Do you feel that Representative Ranson has divided the district?
I don't think she's divided the district, but I really haven't seen a great effort to help to promote the unity of. A good example is across the nation right now. A lot of communities are having difficulty accepting police service. Okay, I work with the Payne County Republicans, and it's not a political issue, but we just happen to be Republicans, and just happen to be the Payne County Republican group, which recognize our law enforcement. Because I personally know Chief Jeff Watts, and I personally know Shannon Gordon, and where I have learned that our police officers, as well as the Sheriff's Department, as well as Oklahoma Bureau of Investigations, they really do work hard to serve our community. But not only that, but I personally are involved in a lot of other service organizations, such as I volunteer Our Daily Bread. I mean, I go down and I actually push the cart to help individuals get their food that they're going to take home, as well as I've worked with, and this is all before the pandemic hit, with the First United Methodist Church free dinner, where my job each time was to literally scrape the leftover food off the trays into the trash, because I don't believe that there is no opportunity to bond and to help the community that is too menial for me. Yes, yes, I've studied for a good number of years. I've earned various degrees. I've, 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 I've supervised literally hundreds of people. I've managed millions of dollars for the federal government. But scraping food off a tray is not too menial for me to do when I know I'm helping people, when I know that I'm doing good for the people that I want to serve. And it made no difference whether I was running or not. I, I've always been ready to serve.
I'm going to close with the same question that I gave your opponent. What would you want the very one thing to remember for a voter in the ballot box?
About me, he said? Okay. That I have a heart and a passion. And my passion is to see our community stay together and grow. Grow economically, small businesses grow, medium-sized businesses. There are a lot that are hurting. And there are small businesses that have closed down because of the pandemic. I have a passion for our children. And it's not just in words, but in action. And that's the reason why I help, like I said, with Our Daily Bread and with the United Methodist Church. And I have a passion for people in general. I want to see our community flourish. I want to see our education system get stronger. I want to see people come together and stay together, not seeing us as Black, white, Hispanic, but we're just people. We're human beings. And all lives, every life, all lives matter. And those are the principles that I will serve our community on. Because when we see each other as one, then we are less likely to have elements to come in and move us in the direction that other cities have seen.
Well, Doctor, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for sitting for that interview. Went a little longer than I expected, but got some good answers in, and stay safe on the trail. Just a few days left.
I will, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you again to those candidates for the opportunity to sit down.
Well, we made it through the local sections of our ballot, so I guess that means it's time to turn our attention to the presidential race.
After this commercial break, Ian Nickel is going to go over the Electoral College, and tell us the surprising states that could be determining factors in tomorrow's election.
Back to the 2020 Ballot Breakdown. I'm Ian Nichols. So far in the show, we've been talking about our local state elections here in Oklahoma, but now it's time for the main event of the evening. Let's talk the presidential race, specifically the Electoral College. I'm sure many of you know, But for those who don't, the Electoral College is the system we use to determine how the president gets chosen. Each state is given a certain amount of electoral votes based on their population. For example, here in Oklahoma, we have a smaller population, so we have been given 7 electoral votes. Historically, the majority of Oklahoma votes Republican. So on Election Day, as long as the majority of Oklahomans vote Republican, all 7 of our electoral votes will be cast for Donald Trump. In total, there are 538 electoral votes. So in order to win the election, a candidate must get at least 270 votes. This is why swing states are such an important part of the election. I've picked out a few states that I think are going to be the determining factors in the election. So if you take a look here, we have a couple of states I'd like to get to. There's Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. There's been a lot of talk about Texas being potentially blue with certain celebrities, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and businessmen, all going down from California to Texas. I don't think that's going to be as big as a problem as they're making it. I think that they'll still remain red, but that's something to look out for in the future. Same with Georgia. Georgia has been one of those states where Atlanta has been the cultural hub of the South, and then that cities normally vote blue there. And there was a tight governor race in 2018 with Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp, which Kemp won. That could be a factor going into the 2024 election and beyond. But as of now, I think Georgia's going to remain red here. We'll talk about Arizona real quick. Arizona is probably one of those states that we have no idea about. NBC News and Marist have a 48-48 tie. In all 5 polls on 2017 to win since November, all but one falls in the margin of error. So this could go either way. There's a big Senate race as well between Mark Kelly and Republican incumbent Martha McSally. I think this one is going to remain red as well, but you never know. The polls, now with the polls, they don't mean everything, but they can tell us a lot about how a state is going to vote. Florida is always a big one when it comes to the Electoral College. In 2000, we saw George W. Bush win by a total of 537 votes against Al Gore in 2000. There's a UFC fighter by the name of Jorge Masvidal. If you haven't seen his flying knee against Ben Askren, it's a sight to see. But he's been supporting Trump, and he's been on a couple of campaign stops with him. I don't know how much that's going to factor in, but we've seen some exit polls, and they've been favoring toward Donald Trump. So that could mean that Florida goes back to red like they did in 2016. So that puts us at 260 electoral votes for Donald Trump and 242 for Joe Biden. It's all going to come down to these 2 states right here, Michigan and Pennsylvania. They've been at the center of controversy in the past couple of weeks. Michigan with their governor, Gretchen Whitmer. She's been criticized for the way she's handled the coronavirus lockdowns, leading to a lot of protests, some protests near the Capitol as well. And Trump won by 10,704 votes in 2016. Will that happen again? Will Biden be able to flip it? Who knows? We'll definitely see when Election Day comes, but that's going to be a big factor. The final one, I really think this one's going to be who determines who wins the election, is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has had a couple of riots break out because of the death of Walter Wallace Jr. I don't know how that's going to impact the rest of the state, but that's happening in Philadelphia, which is Pennsylvania's most popular city. Also, one thing to note, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette endorsed Trump. This is the first time they've endorsed a Republican candidate since 1972. Half of your parents probably weren't alive back then, 48 years ago, which is very impressive. So if we look back on history's sake, in 2016, CNN, the Cook Political Report, ElectoralVote.com, NBC, and the Crystal Ball all had Hillary Clinton winning that night. That's what they predicted before election night. They had it as a lean Democrat. But Trump won barely by about 44,000 votes. So, with that being said, in 2020, the last 10 polls that have been conducted, according to 2070towin.com, Biden is winning in 7 of them, Trump with 3. Is history going to repeat itself tonight? Because it could be the difference between a red victory or a new president. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to have our Roundtable, moderated by Brody Myers, coming up next.
Hi, I'm Will Joyce, the Mayor of Stillwater. As Mayor, it's my responsibility to help develop plans for a variety of resident needs, including roads, emergency services, and utilities. Some of those services are paid for with federal money that the government distributes to states and communities based on Census Bureau data. This is your tax money coming back to our community, but if you or your household aren't counted, we lose nearly $1,200 per person to places like Texas, Kansas, and Arkansas. So help bring that money back to local communities by filling out the 2020 census. This year, it's easy to do. You'll receive a postcard in March 2020 with a unique code for your address. Using that code, simply go online, call, or request a paper copy of the census and fill it out. I want to make sure that you and your whole household are counted in the 2020 census. It's important not just to Stillwater, but to all of Payne County.
Hi everybody, my name is Emily Shooping. I'm your marketing coordinator for the Made in Oklahoma Coalition. I'm coming to you with an amazing opportunity. We are teaming up with the Ocali Media Group at Oklahoma State University. We want to tell your story on the following platforms: streaming, newspaper, and digital. This opportunity will not only allow your story to be told locally, but nationally as well. I am so excited for each of you to join in on this tremendous opportunity. This will not only be good for your business, but it will be good for our great state of Oklahoma. You can be expecting an email from me soon with more details about this opportunity. Local has a name, local has a face, local has a flavor. The Made in Oklahoma Coalition.
Welcome back to the 2020 Ballot Breakdown. Tonight we've gone over everything you need to know when you head into the voting booth tomorrow. But now, well, there's one last thing that we are going to cover. It's the roundtable. The topics and questions for this roundtable were chosen by me and have not been approved by anyone at this table or any of the production staff for this newscast tonight. Joining us for the left side of the aisle is J.D. Barnes. He is the president of the College Democrats here at Oklahoma State, and also with us is Jared Rotow from the Ocali Media Group. On the right side of the aisle, we have Alex Dusky and Parker Terrell. Let's start with, I guess, something that can go both ways, the vice presidential candidates for both of these people. They're one heartbeat away from the presidency. They have to be ready to take over the presidency at a moment's notice without any margin for error. Kamala Harris for the Democrats, Mike Pence for the Republicans. Why is Kamala Harris ready to be in the Oval Office today?
Would you like to take that?
Okay. Well, Kamala wouldn't be my first pick, but to a certain extent, you can't deny that she has been a successful member. Wherever she's been, she has been very successful. And to a certain extent, she does check a lot of the boxes that are popular within the Democratic Party. Some of these may not be, the most specifically pragmatic approaches. I don't specifically love her policies, but you have to admit she is the first female and the second black candidate ever to be on a major ballot. That's still like a monumental thing that within minority groups and I mean specifically females, that is going to be some sort of carry for Biden.
But does that qualify her to lead the free world?
No, but does it qualify anybody? At a certain point, we are choosing between bad options. We're not choosing between two perfect people. So
is that for vice president you're talking about?
Yes.
Or for
yes,
president
vice
as well?
president.
With all due respect, let's try not to interrupt each other.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Highbrow, calm debate. Let's move over to the right side. Why is Mike Pence the right person to serve in the Oval Office tomorrow?
Well, so Mike Pence, as you saw in the debate, you guys against Kamala Harris, he agrees with President Trump on a lot of different policies, but I think that he doesn't bring that same volatile aspect, which, look at it as you like, that's what makes Donald Trump really the most polarizing president we've ever had, possibly the most polarizing candidate we've ever had. Mike Pence is definitely more traditional in his political approach, and you've seen that where he was the governor of Indiana.
You can also say, you know, Pence does have the experience now, being here with 4 years of experience. And can I touch on something that Jared said?
Sure.
You know, you mentioned, you know, being African American and a woman. The argument can be presented, is she just a token? You know, is the Democratic Party just putting Kamala Harris in that position to appeal to more voters?
Yeah, so I have a question also to the to my Democratic colleagues here. So would you classify Joe Biden as more of the moderate option and maybe taking Kamala Harris as more, you know, who's further left? Or would you say that they, you know, maybe thinking of someone like Amy Klobuchar to keep, you know, more moderate voters alive?
20 seconds.
I'd suggest that the choice of Kamala Harris was definitely a choice to sort of shore up the liberal base of the Democratic Party, but it's also a signal that Biden is not necessarily aligning himself with certain social movements, with Black Lives Matter, with other things. It's a sign that it's sort of a way for Biden to disassociate himself from allegations that his movement or his party are associated with, like rioting or with violence, by picking a former prosecutor, while still acknowledging the pain of people who may be attracted or involved with those movements, by picking someone whose life experience would lend itself to addressing the variety of issues they raise.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to say anything you want about Pence.
Well, do you guys think that someone who has as abhorrent to social views as Michael Pence does, being especially pro-gay conversion therapy camps, do you think that that is someone who should be allowed to be the moralistic backbone of our nation should something happen to Donald Trump?
Well, I think the moralistic backbone is not determined strictly by the president. That can be determined with, you know, the legislative branch and the judicial branch as well. But I mean, Mike Pence hasn't enforced any of his specific policies in regards to conversion therapy as vice president. He hasn't, you know, pushed President Trump to make that something that's more prevalent across the nation. So I think that while he has had that background in the past of supporting that conversion therapy, which is something that the Republican Party does not in itself support, I don't think that he's, you know, going to push that to the forefront, especially if he were to become, you know, the leader of the free world.
I want to move on to another topic. We're going to get some more pointed things at both parties. I want to pose this one to you as the president of the College of Dems, because this is on the Democratic platform. Joe Biden wants a public option for health care. He's floated $15,000 for down payments on mortgages. He said he wants a $15 minimum wage. He wants free college. He says he's not going to raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year. Hoover Institution report at Stanford says they think middle-class people are going to get $6,500 in additional taxes. Why should a middle-class American, let's say living in Stillwater, Oklahoma, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Scranton, Pennsylvania, vote for that and take that risk?
You want me to go? Well,
yes.
You just acknowledged me. Yeah, my bad. So I'd say that a middle-class American ought to vote for Biden even in these conditions, because ultimately all of those things are good for the country. Even if you don't directly benefit from a $15 minimum wage, you do benefit from increased amounts of money in workers' pockets, because that money goes it stimulates spending and it stimulates participation in the economy, which ultimately boosts the amount of jobs that we can have across this country. I think people who don't necessarily...
Is it worth having 10% of your income taxed, an additional 10%?
Can I answer that? I think that absolutely, because Biden, despite his more moderate leanings specifically, he does have the most liberal healthcare plan of all time, by far. And so to a certain extent, you're talking about the middle class paying slightly more in taxes, but what they are paying slightly more in taxes, they are paying less in healthcare.
A middle-class citizen making $60,000 a year, a $6,500 tax increase would be 10% additional taxes. I don't think that's slight. That's not not taking one side or the other. That's just math.
Yes, but also many occupational healthcare plans are more than 10% of your yearly salary. Like, at a certain point, you're saying, like, if you spent $8,000 less on healthcare a year, but you were taxed $6,500 more, that is not you being taxed more. That is you saving $1,500.
5
because
seconds
then
to
you're
close
not
it
paying
out.
for your tax.
I would suggest that people who don't necessarily see who might see increases of their taxes ought to also consider what that money goes to pay for. The fact of the matter is that these things benefit our society as a collective. They stimulate the economy and they create new jobs.
Do we have a rebuttal to that? No.
5 seconds.
So, I mean, with the increase of the minimum wage, I believe that would make everything more increased. That would, up the sales tax in certain parts of, that benefits the middle class much more than it does any other sector socioeconomically. If we raise the minimum wage, I mean, we've seen it just due to inflation that would cause, groceries to be higher, etc.
We could have
insurance premiums.
May I have a response to
With
that?
the
I'm
wealth
sorry, you can't.
stratification of this country.
I promise you guys are going to have a lot of time to talk, but we got to move on to another topic. You guys are going to like this one. 230,000 Americans dead on Trump's watch. I know it's not his fault that COVID came, but how should you defend that to a moderate voter?
I think that, I'm not saying that it's good that people are dying. I don't want that to come across this way, but you have to weigh the benefits. Within the last month, there have been more suicides and car accident deaths than there are COVID cases just across the country. And, Joe Biden has such a strict COVID policy that if he were to be elected, have a federal mask mandate across the country. And if you look at the states like New York, California, that have Illinois, Michigan, that haven't reopened, they're still having the excessive amount of COVID deaths, and their economies are still suffering. The students are still not in school. Parents are not working. And you just have to look at it in the big picture and say, is all of this worth it? Risking our economy, our jobs, our lives for...
Parker?
Well, going back to what President Trump's response to COVID-19. I mean, Joe Biden was on record saying that he would have, kept the country open even longer. He was criticizing President Trump with closing down the country because of the lack of information. And while that is true that there was a lack of information regarding COVID-19, regardless of what the president was told, the president's told a lot of things that we don't ever hear about or don't know about. So he made that executive decision to shut down the country, back in March or April. So I believe Joe Biden, it would have been even a more deaths, a harsher response.
Thank you, Parker. Got to stop you there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. 20 seconds. I've got to interrupt both of you because we've got a lot of topics to cover this short amount of time. 20 seconds, hard and fast.
I would suggest that is a mischaracterization of Joe Biden's position because Donald Trump, we know from I believe it was Woodward, that he knew that the virus was airborne as early as February 7th, and yet he didn't shut down the country until March or April. Joe Biden wasn't privy to that information. He wasn't privy to all kinds of information that Donald Trump was.
We got to leave it there. We got to leave it there. We got to move on to another important issue. The Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett confirmed easily in the Senate I say easily, but it was along party lines. It was really never a doubt that she would go to the court. Democrats, first, yes or no, do you support packing the Supreme Court?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes or no?
I mean, it depends on the alternatives,
Merrick
I guess.
Garland made
I think
it so
that's
there's
one
no
of them.
option.
I would suggest either packing the Supreme Court or coming up with a new system.
Okay. Over here, why is Trump's Supreme Court picks the reason people should vote for him?
I mean, throughout history, there's been, more left-leaning justices throughout the Supreme Court, and the Republicans didn't suggest packing the court. So just because, the Supreme Court is as conservative as it's been in a long time doesn't mean that fundamental, we would have to amend the entire Constitution to create a Supreme Court packing, upend our entire, judicial and political foundation just for that to happen. And I don't, again, it's not been that way in the past, so I don't understand why.
I'm going to
needs
ask
to be
two
changed.
challenging questions here. Were the Republicans hypocritical on Merrick Garland?
Honestly, I don't know how to answer that.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
I think the Democrats would have done the same exact thing.
Hold on. If the Democrats pack the court, are the Republicans the next time they're going to take office just not going to do the same thing? It's just going to be 15, 30, 100, 50.
Well, that's why I'd suggest we come up with a new system entirely, because ultimately that is a real rational
Do you think
Fair
Joe
enough.
Biden can do that in
possibility.
4 years?
No, I don't think Joe Biden can because he's
No.
the president. That's a constitutional
Fair
amendment
enough.
that comes through the legislature.
Everyone, I would love to get into a lot more questions. We could do this for an hour. I know we could, and I've got 1,000 more questions in the back of my mind. But unfortunately, we only have a limited amount of time. Thank you to J.D. Barnes, Jared Rota, Parker Terrell, Alex Deskey. We got as much substance in as we could in 10 minutes. And I believe we are going to... All right.
Hi everybody, my name is Emily Shooping. I'm your marketing coordinator for the Made in Oklahoma Coalition. I'm coming to you with an amazing opportunity. We are teaming up with the Oakley Media Group at Oklahoma State University. We want to tell your story on the following platforms: streaming, newspaper, and digital. This opportunity will not only allow your story to be told locally, but nationally as well. I am so excited for each of you to join in on this tremendous opportunity. This will not only be good for your business, but it will be good for our great state of Oklahoma. You can be expecting an email from me soon with more details about this opportunity. Local has a name, local has a face, local has a flavor. The Made in Oklahoma Coalition.
Welcome back to the 2020 Ballot Breakdown. Tonight we've gone over everything you need to know when you head into the voting booth tomorrow.
Well, there is one last thing we haven't talked about, where those voting booths are. In Stillwater, there are 19 polling locations for you to vote at. The polling locations are determined by your precinct. To figure out where your precinct and polling location are, you can visit paynecounty.org. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
And like we said in the beginning of this show, this year is one of the highest voter turnout rates we've seen in the past 10 years, so be sure to get there early because the lines may be long.
Well, that's all we have for you tonight on the Ballot Breakdown. We hope you fully now are more ready to go out and hit the polls with all the information we gave you.
Regardless of who you're voting for, from all of us here at the Daily O, please go out tomorrow and make your voice heard. For the Daily O, I'm Alex Deskey.
And I'm Brody Myers. Have a great night.